She was the world's first neuroscientist doula. And what the science that she was communicating said was this. It's very simple, that everything we know about the developing infant brain, everything we know about the maternal brain, everything we know about the way that our stress system develops points to very close contact and responsiveness day and night for infants. And that's diametrically opposed to almost everything that we hear in our dominant culture. So it's debatable because in neuroscience, infancy, like neurobiologically, infancy is considered the first 3 years of life, so 0 to 3. But in like developmental psychology, it's like 0 to 5 years. And then if we're looking at like nervous system specific maturation, it can be, many, many years beyond that. But specifically for neuroscience, 0 to 3. Basically, babies are born with a survival brain, and they don't have their emotional brain or their thinking brain fully online yet, because babies are born with 25% of their brain volume. So they're essentially born premature. This was part of like our development as humans being bipedal animals in order to get through the birth canal. So babies come into this world and they have this period of exterogestation where they actually don't realize that they're separate from the mom's body. And their brain is so vulnerable, so brilliant, right? At the same time, but so vulnerable, growing so rapidly, building 1 million neural connections per second in the 0 to 3 period. And mostly what the brain is doing is priming its stress system, working on the circuitry that lays the foundation for lifelong wellness. So lays the foundation for resilience, for empathy, for how our amygdala responds to threats in the environment. And we know now that like an enlarged amygdala or a hypervigilant brain can lead to mental health issues. And this is also like a massive oversimplification of the science. But yes, in essence, if a baby's left to their own devices to move from like a state of high stress to a state of low stress, that can create hypervigilance, that can create a lack of safety in their brain and in their body, that then does put them at a predisposition for mental health issues later on. Our brains are in this hyper period of neuroplasticity in infancy, which is part of why our responsiveness is so important. We're like literally showing them how to be human, but it doesn't mean that repair is impossible later on. And it doesn't mean that we can't lay down new tracks, right? Or rewiring. Like a lot of what adults do in therapy is exactly that, rewiring.
Right.
I love this conversation so much because I think it gives a voice to babies that maybe can't communicate this themselves yet, even though science is trying really hard. But I think societally, in the West at least, right, in most patriarchal cultures, we have no idea who the human infant is. Like no clue. We are learning. And some of us that maybe had a lot of exposure to babies in earlier years have more attunement or more of an idea of what babies need. But babies are like purely somatic beings and they need closeness because of this period of exterogestation. They also they're not mini adults. They're actually babies. So their brain architecture is really different. Their sleep architecture is really different. They wake up at night. It's an evolutionary protective mechanism. It's totally normal and natural. They also have much shorter sleep cycles. So adults are like 90 minutes and babies, 0 to 3 years, when I say baby, are like 45 to 60 minutes. And the other really interesting part about that being 45 to 60 minutes is that so this is like the important point, I think, from my perspective. Adults have sleep cycles, right? We come in and out of sleep cycles all night long, but we have no idea unless we have to pee, right? And then you're awake. So coming out of a sleep cycle is like you're going into a lighter stage of sleep. Adults' brains scan the environment and adults can meet their own needs because you're an adult. So if you're cold, you pull the covers up. If you have to go to the bathroom, you go pee. If you're a baby and you wake up in the lighter stage of sleep at the end of your first sleep cycle, you have this thing that, is generally called a threat detection system. It scans the environment and it looks around and it's like, am I hungry? Am I thirsty? Am I cold? Am I lonely? Right? And then the baby signals to have their need met because they can't go meet their own need. Some babies, depending on temperament, don't signal. because maybe they don't have as sensitive of stress systems. So maybe they like suck their thumb and go back to sleep, or maybe they grunt a little and wiggle and go back to sleep. The vast majority of babies, oh, also I like to call those unicorn babies because that is not the norm. And a lot of the premise of like most conversations around sleep training are pertaining to those unicorn babies, when in reality, there's like this whole separate category of babies that just cannot do that. They can't go back to sleep without parental input. And that's the norm. That's very, very normal.